Hey, how you doing? My name's Johnny. You're watching Hillbilly Modeling, and it's time to start a new project. So this is the one that I have chosen. This is the T34 85 by Tamiya in 1/35 scale. And along with that, we're going to be adding a couple of little extras, some PE and metal tracks. But for this video, this part one, we'll be doing the lower hull, and we'll also be fitting these metal tracks right here. These are the San Xin Model metal tracks, so my first metal tracks. We'll see how that works out, and I don't expect any real issues because if you saw the kit review, we kind of sized that up with the rubber band type tracks, and they look to be very similar, so we shouldn't be too many issues with it. So let's just go ahead and jump into it and get this build started. So we'll take a quick look at our instructions here and flip over to step one here. And that's our road wheels and our drive sprocket and idler, and we'll put the rear armor on the lower hull and put those on. So the first thing we need to do, of course, is we're going to have to cut some parts off. We're going to start with the road wheels, and I do cut these sprue gates long, and that'll leave a little nub there on our road wheels. And the reason why I like to do it that way is because that allows me to get in real close with my sprue cutters here and get them as close to the tire as possible, and then we just take and sand those down. And of course this takes quite a while to do because we have let's see, I don't remember how many. I think it's 5 sets. So we'll get, or 5 sets per side, I'll say. And then when it comes time to put them together, they just press together. Now these road wheels do not have a poly cap inside them. It goes on the outside. So here we just need to kind of snap it together, put a little bit of Tamiya extra thin, and that will suck in around those rims and make sure that it's fully seated. Now when it comes time to put together our drive wheels here, our track drive wheels, they do have a poly cap, and we want to make sure that we don't forget to put those poly caps in because it would be difficult to separate these wheels once that glue has set up. So I am putting plenty of Tamiya extra thin on there because Tamiya extra thin kind of wants to evaporate really quick, so I need to get enough of that glue on there to kind of hold it so that we can go ahead and assemble this. Now this is a keyed part. It'll only line up one way, and we just want to press and make sure that that's well seated together. We have 2 of these to do. And then for our idlers up front, it goes together just like our road wheels do. The poly cap for it is on the outside, so we'll just glue it up from the inside here, and that Tamiya extra thin will just wick right down in between those adjoining parts, and we'll make sure everything is straight. Now we can turn our attention here to our final drives. Now they do fit kind of snug, but I'm just going to put this in place for now. And as you can see, we have this rather large gap here in the side hull that's really not supposed to be there. That was there for the motorized version, and since we don't have a motor and we're not going to be doing that with this kit, I'm just using some 1mm polystyrene stock card here, and I'm just tracing out, as you can see there, the outline of the fill section that we're going to be cutting out. And this polystyrene is very pliable, it's easy to cut, so we'll just cut that out into the shape that we're tracing out. Just leave it a little oversized and kind of file it down to actually fit that that slot there that we want to fill. So with those 2 pieces made, we can go ahead and glue our final drive into place. And just using the Tamiya extra thin, let it soak in around our final drive. There's a little nub on the inside too I don't want these to fall off. Now with these fitted pieces, I have left them long on the top, which is alright. That's not a problem. We will trim that later. So we're just going to press that in where it needs to go. And it should just have just enough friction to hold itself in place. And then we can go ahead, use the Tamiya extra thin here, and we can glue that up. Now this 1mm spacer, or not a spacer, but the filler plate that we've made here is a little bit thinner than the actual sides of the hull. So we do want to make sure that we're lined up on the outside so that it'll be flush. And I'm just using my tweezers there to kind of squeeze it together there and make sure that it's in position there. And we'll go ahead and put the other one together and let that set up. Next, we're going to use some perfect plastic putty. Now this is a water-based modeling putty. And I just put some out on a little piece of card here. It just makes it easier for me to deal with it. And I'm going to use a cocktail stick or toothpick or whatever else. I don't know how many names this thing has, but I'm just going to use it to plug those holes. There's 2 holes, one on either side of the hull. And that's to accept the an internal piece to hold your batteries in. And we're not going to be putting any batteries in it, so we need to go ahead and fill those since that we don't have that battery bulkhead, I guess we could call it, to actually install in this kit. This being a water-based putty, it will dry fairly quick for us. You really only need to give it 15-20 minutes, and then it's plenty dry enough. Now I am also putting a plug on the opposite side to kind of help hold everything in. And yeah, so we'll set that aside and let it dry. Alright, now our filler pieces here are secure enough that we can go ahead and trim those off flush with the top edge there of the bathtub style hull. And you just need to very simply just cut it off. And then I do come in with a 400 grit sanding stick here, and just want to make sure everything's nice and flush. We don't want any problems when we get ready to put this thing together to mate it to the upper hull, so we'll just trim it right down. So now it's time to attach the rear section of our hull here. Now you can't get it upside down, it's only going to go one way. I am going to use this clamp here to kind of put a little bit of pressure on it there. Kind of squeeze our final drives in, because there's not a lot of meat there in the polystyrene. We don't want those to be kind of bowed out once we put the glue on it, to let that set and affix our rear plate there. Now these tanks did have a lot of gaps and stuff in them from the factory, so that's not a real issue. I don't think we really need to do any filling or anything here, but we are going to just go ahead and glue this plate into place. Now there are other holes in the bottom of our bathtub style hull, but we're not going to worry about that because we don't have an interior. And we don't have a figure or anything. We're going to be building this with the hatches closed, so that's not a big deal inside. Now with our perfect plastic putty, say that 10 times fast, with it dry, I can use my curved blade here just to kind of level it down a little bit, just to remove the majority of that so I don't have a whole lot of sanding dust. That's kind of the way I kind of like to do it. And once I get that trimmed down fairly close, we can just go ahead and use our 400 grit sanding stick here. And we're just going to sand that off nice and flush with the side of the hull. And like I say, this hole is actually not supposed to be there. It's for that internal part that is not included in the kit. And of course, once it's sanded down nice and flush, we'll just go ahead and dust it off there. And we want to check and make sure that we don't have any gaps there. As far as I know, this hole didn't have any real holes in the side of it, except from those that came from German guns. Now when it comes to our back plate, we do have these cleats. There are two of them. And this is where our tow cables would be attached if we needed to either tow something or to extract the vehicle that's been damaged in battle or is stuck in the mud or whatever. The way that I like to do this, if at all possible, is put the part into place. Then we can put the Tamiya extra thin around it. And just check, and you want to make sure that we've got these cleats as straight as we can get them. It depends upon your eye. My eye's kind of crooked, so chances are one or two of these, because there's two that goes on the front as well, may end up just slightly off. But these vehicles were made rather quickly, so that's going to be my excuse if one of them doesn't come out as straight as it should be. And then in the very center of our rear plate there, we do have an eyelet that we're going to put in. So we'll just set that eyelet into place. And in some instances, it might be beneficial to put a little bit of Tamiya extra thin there to hold it into place. But this one sets locating slot with no problems, and we'll just hit it with the glue there. And then just press it down a little bit and make sure that it is square to the plate. And like I say, I tend to use a lot more glue than I need to, but I don't have problems with my parts falling off. Now when it comes to our front axle, there's a little nut here that goes into this clamp, and then it sets into the lower hull there, and it is adjustable. This is for the running type model if we were building that. So it has a screw that comes up through the bottom, and we'll just go ahead and put that screw in and snug that down. Now this may come into play a little bit later on when we go to fit our metal tracks. Unlike plastic tracks, the metal tracks you can't cut and trim and modify them to to take out some unwanted slack or anything. So this may be helpful for us. So all we got to do is slide our axle in. Now when it comes time to put our idlers on, we do need our polycaps for that. So there are, let's see, 3 different types of polycaps here. So we want to make sure that you get the right ones for the front hubs, for the idlers. And you can actually sand this just a little bit to take off any little nubs or what have you from the sprue gate that was on them. Now all we have to do is to place our idlers onto the axle shaft there, and just press the polycap on, and then we'll just push it straight on through until it's snug against the hull, and then we can go ahead and set the one on the opposite side and press the hub polycap into place there. And that's all there is to it. No glue needed. Alright. So we have polycaps installed into our track drive wheels. So those go on as you would expect. Now we do have all of these hubs for our road wheels, and I'm going to clean those up just like we did the polycap hubs for our idler. Now we can go ahead and put all of our road wheels on, and it's very simple. We just put the set on and put the polycap hub into place, and we're all set. I'm a little bit out of frame there. I apologize for that. But we need to do this so that we can take care of our next step, which is kind of jumping ahead in our instructions, but I think it's pretty important because we're going to be fitting our metal tracks. And we want to make sure that there aren't any issues with those tracks before we get further down the line in our build, which means we have to put these tracks together. So the way they go together is we have two types of shoes here. There's one with the guide horn in the middle, and then one that is just flat. And you just simply slide them together and insert the brass pin. And I didn't find a single track that had a deformed hole that needed to be drilled out, or a pin that didn't fit. So I really am enjoying these tracks. They go together really easy. And at this point, once we get our track length together, we will go ahead and put those onto the lower hull, and we need to check our clearances and also set our track length, because I'm not sure how many shoes, track shoes, that we're going to actually need for each length on both sides. So once we have our two lengths of tracks assembled, we can just go ahead and set the tank down on, or the lower hull at least, down on top of the tracks, and we can just wrap these around. Now I have these oriented with the pins, the head of the pins towards the inside of the hull, so they are inboard. And then the next thing to do is to kind of bring the track around and get it positioned to where we can slide a pin in to hold them in place. And then we could check our sag. Yeah, sag. That's the word I'm looking for. We want to check our track sag so that it looks, it'll look natural when we're done with it here. So let's see if I can actually get this on film with me trying to get this pin in. I've got to hold the track together there, close that gap up. And then we're going to slide the pin in, and I hope you can see what I'm doing. It would be much easier off camera, but yeah, we're getting it. So we're in good shape here. And that's how easy these tracks actually go together. They are rather phenomenal. I am impressed with these. Now I did put the head of this track on the outside so that the head of this pin on the outside versus the inside with all the others. That way I can locate it later and pull it out. And as you can see, the tracks actually work. They're really nice tracks. So, yeah. So with that done, what we're going to do is go ahead and pull our pin back out. And that's why we put it towards the outside, so we could identify it and find it. And then we'll just take the track off. And now it's time to go ahead and glue these pins into place, because we have the right amount of shoes to make up our track lengths. So what we're going to be using here is the medium CA glue. We don't want to use the wicking extra thin type, because that would possibly go straight down that pin and bind our track up. So all we're going to do is pull the heads of the pins out just far enough to where we can apply some of that medium CA glue. And we're just going to apply that at the head of the pin. And to do that, I'm just going to use a toothpick for that. And I'm just dipping it into the CA glue, and we're just going to put it, as you can see, on the back side of the head of the pin there. And do 4 or 5, however many. Just don't lose count of them. And then we're just going to push them into place. And we'll allow that CA glue to set up. That way these pins aren't going to later on come out and fall out and our track come apart. We wouldn't want that to happen. So all you got to do is just keep going down the line and just glue these track pins into place. So with our track pins all glued up, except for the one that joins them together for us, you can see we've got some pretty good track sag going on there. They actually look pretty good. I really like how they look. Now these aren't real expensive tracks, so we'll talk about that probably later. So the next thing we need to do is check the fit, because these pins, I've got them inboard, but I want to make sure that they don't interfere with the upper hull. If they do, then we're going to have an issue. So we just want to make sure that we don't have any issues before we get further on. And this is that test fit, test fit, test fit philosophy of mine, especially when you're using parts that don't come with the kit. You don't know if they were actually designed for this kit or not, especially with this particular track. And we don't have any issues here. The hull goes together, and it looks pretty good. So I think this is gonna really set this this little build off. All right, so that will take care of part one. We managed to get our metal tracks in place and at the right length, and it's looking pretty good, I think. I really enjoyed putting these tracks together. They were a lot easier than I thought they were going to be. Next week, part two, we'll be working on the upper hull section, taking care of some PE. We got to do some modifications there to accept that PE. So we'll be taking care of those little things. A lot of cutting and drilling and stuff like that. Get that to look pretty good for us there. So if you're new to the channel and you're not a subscriber, I hope that today earned your subscription. And for all my subscribers, it's because of you guys that I continue to make these little videos. And I hope you enjoyed this one. And if you did, don't forget to give me a like. I'd appreciate that. So the next time, guys, you stay safe, and I'll see you in the next one.